Hey guys, what's going on? So I'm back again with another video. This one just talking about my existing collection once again. So we're returning to the alphabet, going down that path. This particular video is going to focus just on one band again. And to be honest, they have so many albums, I'm not going to include them all in one video because otherwise we'll be here all night. I also find that it's hard to do a ranking discographies for this band just because they have so many albums. Like, I think it's about 18 studio albums or something, and for me the task of ranking those, like putting them in order, is just way too difficult, especially when these albums have so much their own individual character, so I'm not going to do that. What I've decided to do is just split this particular band up into 3 separate videos, and I will include some interim ones along the way to change it up, like some response videos, something like that. So anyway, the band in question is Cannibal Corpse, so you probably heard me mention them before. One of my favourite bands in the death metal genre. I'm always wavering between Autopsy and Cannibal Corpse, but yeah, Cannibal Corpse has a lot of nostalgic value for me. Clearly they need no introduction, like one of the most legendary bands in the scene. A common household name really, like even people who aren't into death metal are familiar with Cannibal Corpse, which speaks volumes about their influence and their impact, I think. So yeah, just a brilliant band, but as I said, too hard to rank. So what I'm going to do is just go through the albums chronologically and give you my take on it. Because I know a lot of people have heard these albums anyway, so you don't need me to describe them in too much detail. So yeah, we'll just see how it goes. Anyway, what I put on in the background, first of all, this is Malevolent Creation with Essentials. So what that is, it's actually a 3-album compilation. You've got here, so you've got In Cold Blood, The Fine Art of Murder, and I forgot the other one, but I will let you know at the bottom of the screen. But yeah, anyway, classic New York death metal, I think from Buffalo, New York, which is incidentally where Cannibal Corpse were from originally as well. So yeah, one of the most respected bands in the genre. At the moment, the album I'm playing is The Fine Art of Murder. I think that is the best of these 3, that's my favourite. Like just some of these tracks like Mass Graves, just, you know, and To Die at Hand, Manic Demise, like just some really classic old school death metal riffs, you know, which are really groovy. So yeah, I really like it. But anyway, you know Malevolent Creation probably. If you haven't, definitely check them out. So that's Malevolent Creation with Essentials. Okay, so getting on to the band at hand now, which is Cannibal Corpse. I'm going to show you them one by one. Interesting. These are in chronological order. This is Cannibal Corpse with Butchered at Birth, Eaten Back to Life. So you might be thinking, what do you mean? Why are you saying 2 album titles in one? The reason is, they're actually included on one CD. So you'll notice here, this is the Butchered at Birth design back cover, but there's actually 20 tracks on here. So what they've done, it's somewhat of a compilation release. They've included both albums on the one disc, and it's quite funny because Eaten Back to Life was the first album, then Butchered at Birth the second, but they've actually reversed the order, so Butchered at Birth starts this one off, which is, yeah, I don't know why that is. I bought this particular copy in Australia, and this in '95. At that time, Cannibal Corpse had just come to Australia for the first time doing their tour for the Bleeding, and I think this particular copy, like this edition I have, that was released as a kind of promotion of their older albums, because you know the Bleeding was a very popular album, as was Tomb of the Mutilated. So yeah, I'm not sure, maybe other people know, but I've never seen one like this where it's yeah, a compilation. Like you see, it's the original logo of the band, which is nice as a collector's item. Yeah, but that's unique. So anyway, and you'll also see here, like the disc is the Butchered at Birth design, but then the insert is Eaten Back to Life, so they've made it a real mixed bag. So I'm going to start off in chronological order. So obviously Eaten Back to Life, that's this one. This was the first release by the band. I have actually spoken about it before in a death metal vinyl collection, so I'm not going to repeat myself too much. Debut album, it's legendary, fast, explosive, energetic. I think for me, it shows the youthful energy of this band when they first started. And as I mentioned before, it's heavily influenced by thrash metal. It's steeped in thrash for sure. Like you hear just on some of the riffs, those like groove-driven riffs and like the head-banging moments. It's definitely influenced by bands like Slayer, that kind of thing. Like it's got that thrash groove, which is cool. I really like that because a lot of their other albums became more extreme. That's good as well, but it's just that this one had its own character for sure. So yeah, first album they ever released. It's got so Chris Barnes, the vocalist at the time, like his trademark vocals. And what I like about them on this album is they're really sort of aggressive and shouted. Like they're sung with a lot of passion. And yeah, the music itself, it's played very well, like executed precisely. The sound of the drums is really sort of thunderous and clattery. It gives it this raw edge. The guitars are mixed so well, and like the bass, you can hear everything extremely well. And it's just got these explosive, energetic, catchy songs of death metal. So for its time, this album would have been so extreme and groundbreaking. And like, it still is extreme, don't get me wrong, but just for its time, it would have shocked people. And then, as I mentioned before, that legendary artwork, that is really summarizing the music contained inside. Explosive, energetic, outrageous, over the top. But yeah, it's just awesome. So just show you the inner cover. So you see, there it is for Eaten Back to Life. So you've got the portrait of the band there. And then the lyrics over here, which are readable, except as I get older, the print gets smaller. It's harder to read. But yes, I've mentioned before, this is my favorite album, actually, for nostalgic purposes, I think. Even though it wasn't the first one I heard, but just when I was really getting into this style of music heavily in my late teens, this was one that I always came back to. So yeah, great album. Some of my favorite songs, as I've mentioned before: Shredded Humans, Edible Autopsy, Mangled, Scattered Remains, Splattered Brains. And also, Born in the Casket has got this really awesome mosh breakdown drum fill at the end, which is just irresistible, fantastic track. Also, one that's grown on me recently is Rotting Head, because it's got this explosive, outrageous guitar solo at the end, which is really cool. Also, Buried in the Backyard, the last track, it has an excessively long intro of about 2 minutes, but then like when the song gets going, it's just awesome. But really, there's no bad tracks on this first album, Eaten Back to Life. It's just a milestone of death thrash. Like it's definitely brutal death metal, but still taking influence from thrash, so it's a nice unique balance. So that's Cannibal Corpse with Eaten Back to Life. By the way, if you want to see a more detailed review, you can check out my most recent death metal vinyl video. So then we move on to the second album, Butchered at Birth. So this was the same lineup of the band, and I'll just show you. See, they've even shared the booklet, obviously, but here you have Cannibal Corpse, the Butchered at Birth lyrics, and band portrait, everything like that. Yeah, so this is the second album, which has a lot of nostalgic value for me as well, because when I bought these when I was 16, I taped them onto the Walkman. I know it seems ancient now, and I used to listen to them on the way to school, especially this album a lot. This album saw like quite a distinct change of character. It's nowhere near as thrashy as it was before. It's going straight more in the direction of purist death metal. It's a lot more down-tuned and sort of dark sounding. I often say, even though death metal tends to be brutal, I would say this is the darkest Cannibal Corpse album, and I think that's a lot to do with the atmosphere invoked by the production. Like, the guitars are very down-tuned. The bass is very audible, so it's like it's drenched in bass. It's soaked in bass, and it gives it this awesome, thick, heavy, murky kind of tone. Chris Barnes' vocals have just gone down 2 steps, so this is where he really went for that guttural style. Like, the first album, he was still a bit shouty, but in this particular album, he's just going extremely low and guttural as possible. And it was an influence to a lot of death metal bands, I think, and vocalists in future, because he really took it to the extreme. And what I like about it is, unlike a lot of death metal bands these days, like slam death metal or something like that, they sing in that really low-pitched, gurgly voice, but it just sounds like someone, gargling, basically. But with Chris, you can actually hear the vocals are quite dry, so you can hear the raspiness and the gravel in his voice, and at the same time being low, but it has this really awesome effect. And it's quite funny, like, the drums are kind of in the background, so they don't dominate the mix. The music does. It's a kind of weird production, but that's what I like about it. It has character. And when I first heard this album when I was younger, like songs like Meat Hook Sodomy, it seems a kind of, like, impenetrable blast fest at first, especially with the unintelligible vocals, but, like, upon a few listens, when you listen to songs, there are some really quirky, catchy moments and in these songs, and that's what I like about it. It's really eerie and sinister and like sewer-like, the whole atmosphere and the mix. But it just has these quirky, groovy moments which like have you tapping along, and it's just fantastic. So again, no bad songs on this. It features the song Gutted, which is now like a live favorite. It's got like a mosh-tastic part in the middle, like, you know, and they have a lot of those moments. But some of my favorite tracks on this, aside from that, well, Meat Hook Sodomy was the first song from this album I ever heard, so it has some kind of nostalgic value. But other ones for me definitely would be Living Dissection and Under the Rotted Flesh, just again with some very quirky riffs and guitar solos as well. And like the guitar solos on this album, they're not on every song, but they just sort of burst out of nowhere and really command your attention, so that's cool. Covered with Sores is like really groovy, heavy track, like, you know, that intro part is just so epic and demanding of headbanging, you know, the chin 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 chin, like just such a good groove. And then the mid-paced groove in that song is just awesome. I love it. So yeah, Covered with Sores is a great song. Also, Vomit the Soul, one of my favorites, like really takes me back to a certain time when I was listening to this music. That's got some really like just loads of twists and turns and great riffs. It also features guest vocals from Glenn Benton from Deicide, like he does the high-pitched screams and everything. So it's like a real contrast between those two voices. It's awesome, awesome guitar solo in that song. Also the title track, Butchered at Birth, some of the best Cannibal Corpse grooves I've ever heard. Like you're just really tapping your head along to that song. Like Butchered at Birth, a medley of really catchy, quirky riffs. Fantastic. Let's see what else. Also, Innards Decay, yeah, the last track. Really love that song. Like just some great, just bouncy, pseudo thrashy riffs in that song. But like the whole album, it just invokes this dark, disturbing atmosphere. Oh, another thing I was going to say about the vocals was there's not much reverb on these vocals, so they sound very kind of in your face. But it's just sort of like, it's got this dungeon-like dark atmosphere, which is just very suited to the sinister nature of the lyrics. And also, obviously, like, take a look at these artworks. I should have put the disclaimer up before, like, they're very explicit. This one, and not glorifying violence, obviously, but like just in terms of shock value and how iconic it is, especially like the zombies. So I remember when I saw this when in my teen years, it shocked me a lot at the time, and I thought, not glorifying, this really suits the nature of the music I find, this artwork. So anyway, yeah. This, although I don't rank Cannibal Corpse albums, for nostalgic value, this would also have to be one of my favorites for sure. Like, takes me back to a certain time in my life, and, you know, listening to these songs, I still listen to them to this day and really enjoy them. So, yeah, that's another great album. So, combined, so we have, first of all, Cannibal Corpse, Eaten Back to Life, and Butchered at Birth. Both great albums. Okay, now up next, you'll know, if you're familiar with the chronology, you'll know that the next album was Tomb of the Mutilated from 1992, I think. Yeah, now, that is a legendary album. A lot of people regard it as their favorite, actually. It would be one of my favorites, and unfortunately I can't show that to you because, as I mentioned before, in 2005 my car got broken into and some total pricks stole it, thrashed the shit out of it, and also stole all the CDs from the glove box. So one of those albums, was Tomb of the Mutilated. So that was a bit sad because it was the first Cannibal Corpse album I ever bought, actually. And yeah, so that was lost. I know that's 16 years ago, but I still haven't got around to replacing it. But it is a fantastic album, you know. Infamous for like the really low guttural vocals, even more brutal than before. Like this really abrasive drum sound, and like also renowned for the controversial, offensive song titles and lyrics, but obviously some great songs of that, like my favorite being Hammer Smashed Face, which is now a live favorite. But yes, definitely, you probably know it anyway, but definitely check out Tomb of the Mutilated. It is a great album, and I need to get my replacement copy. Anyway, so the next one in line, here is Hammer Smashed Face. So as I said, Hammer Smashed Face was featured on Tomb of the Mutilated, but they also released it as somewhat of a single EP. So yeah, I got this one in Australia around about, I think, 95, something like that. And I've actually got two copies, which I'll explain. But it's got, so the main song is Hammer Smashed Face from Tomb of the Mutilated, one of the band's most famous, recognized songs are so brutal, and so many quirky, catchy riffs in that, and like inhumanly low guttural vocals. By the way, the first death metal band I ever heard was Dismember, and Pungent Stench. I think this was like the third, among those essential bands. But like the first song I ever heard was Hammer Smash Face, so that this song has nostalgic value to me too. Great riff here, Mass Graves. Okay, so this song is just brilliant. Really like Hammer Smash Face, and I think even non-fans know this song. It's one of their best actually, and I think one of the best off Tomb of the Mutilated. So it's released as that, and then they also include 2 cover songs. So the first is The Exorcist, originally performed by Possessed, which is just awesome. I admit, when I was 14 years old and I heard this album, Hammer Smash Face, for the first time, I hadn't heard Possessed, so I I heard the Cannibal Corpse version first, but like with Chris's vocals and everything, they just make it even sound more macabre and death-like. Like Possessed was obviously very thrashy, but like they just make it really brutal and evil sounding with the Cannibal Corpse cover. So especially the guitar solo is just brilliant. Everything is razor sharp. Like with a lot of those old bands like Possessed, it's kind of like a rough mix in production, but in this one it's like razor sharp, precise, and it's got that part, Help Me in the song, like in the Possessed version, it's like, but Chris goes, and it's just fucking awesome. Like he's got this really sort of ghoulish voice when he does that part, so that's great. The other cover is Zero the Hero, originally done by Black Sabbath, so from the Ian Gillan days. So Zero the Hero is actually a very good song. This band does a really good cover of it too. It's just when if you hadn't heard the Black Sabbath original, you would think it would be a very suitable death metal song. So that's what's cool. A bit like Metallica, with this band, when they do certain covers, they make it sound like their own song, which I really like. So this was the first release I ever heard by the band before buying Butchered at Birth, Eaten Back to Life, when my friend got a copy. And speaking of which, you will see here, so this is the copy that I subsequently got. It's like 3 tracks. And then my friend who got the original, he gave me this one in exchange for the Anthrax LP, but this one has the same tracks, so Hammer Smash Face, The Exorcist, and Zero the Hero, but it also features 2 bonus tracks. One is Shredded Humans and one is Meat Hook Sodomy. So I think what they were doing on this particular version was they were trying to promote their older albums by releasing a song from each of those. So those particular songs from Butchered at Birth and Eaten Back to Life, Shredded Humans and Meat Hook Sodomy, are also very nostalgic songs for that reason. So I've got the 2 discs here, which is nice bit of trivia, bit of collectibleness. But that's Cannibal Corpse with Hammer Smash Face. So brings back memories of 1993 for sure. Okay, and the last one I'm going to talk about to close a chapter. This is The Bleeding, so the last album to feature Chris Barnes as the vocalist. By the way, like I said, when Cannibal Corpse came to Australia in 1995, I was lucky enough to see them, so that was really cool to see with Chris as the vocalist. And it was almost the original lineup, except I think not Bob Rouse, it was Rob Barrett on guitar, but he's pretty much close to original, but it was just, that was when the band was still quite underground in a sense, and it was just really an amazing experience. I was beside myself when I saw that show. It was amazing. Anyway, this was the 4th album by the band, The Bleeding. This one has a kind of boring diff, actually, but whatever. So this album came out in 1994. Here we have nice, well, not nice, but readable lyrics. Now, what's to be said about this album? This is one of their most legendary, I think. A lot of people consider this to be their favorite Cannibal Corpse album. Now, with me, I really like it a lot. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it is a damn good album. And you can see here, this is the censored version. Like in Australia, they often released it without listing all of the songs because some were too offensive. But what can be said about this album? The last album to feature Chris Barnes on vocals. This is where the band sort of went in a groovier direction. Like you think of the earlier albums, especially Tomb of the Mutilated and Butchered at Birth, it's very sort of impenetrable and fast and aggressive. This is where the band started writing more sort of hooky and groovy and catchy songs. Like when you think of particular tracks like Stripped, Raped and Strangled, Return to Flesh, The Bleeding, songs like that, where it's like really groovy, catchy riffs. And I think that's what sets this album apart. Like, they do have the faster, more brutal songs as well, so it's a mixed bag, but they're starting to experiment with catchier stuff, which is interesting. The production on this album is unique. It's got a really good bass tone, and the vocals sound very dry, but the way it all blends together, it mixes really well. Sometimes I have to say though, I don't like the drums sound. Like, it's got a really sort of rattly snare sound, like Butchered at Birth, very snare heavy, except sometimes it sounds a little bit thin to me. I don't know, like at times I think, oh, it's a thin production, but other times I think it blends together well. But it's a unique production, and yeah, definitely interesting. You can really hear the bass prominently, which is good. But for me, maybe, yeah, I would say sometimes I feel that this production is a little bit too dry and thin, but its uniqueness gives it some kind of charm anyway. But really, really good album. Like, definitely almost like a greatest hits album, really. There's no bad songs on this album either. Some of my favorites going through, like Pulverized, definitely one of my favorites. Like, just so fast and aggressive, but it's got a good groove. And like that part where he says, when he says, "Put me away before I put another in the grave," like the second time where it's this really high-pitched shriek. Like, Chris has got this high-pitched ghoul-like voice. Like, it's not black metal like some death metal bands when they do that high-pitched scream. It sounds like black metal, like Evolved, for example. But with Chris, it sounds just like this really, I don't know, horror-like, ghoulish sound. It's unique, which later evolved into his kind of pig squeal vocals. But yeah, Pulverized is a great track. Also, the Pickaxe Murders, the Bleeding, you know, like just with that really catchy riff, like like just, you know, as Gene Hoglan said, cool. What else? Force Fed Broken Glass is a good track, like a lot of twists and turns in that song, and just some really intricate, unique playing. So yeah, really good. Yeah, not a bad track, nothing bad to say. Other famous live tracks they play on this would be Staring Through the Eyes of the Dead and Fucked with a Knife. Songs like that. But yeah, the only one that doesn't grab me that much, to be honest, is Return to Flesh, because it's a bit too slow and boring. But aside from that, I think, and even that song, it does have some kind of charm to it. So I think overall it is a great album. Yeah, so the end of an era for this band, because it was the last one to feature Chris. But yeah, legendary album. After this, Chris would be, you know, he left the band, he would be replaced by George Corpse Grinder Fisher. So that's what I'm going to talk about in the next chapter of Cannibal Corpse. So consider this to be like the first phase of Cannibal Corpse with Chris Barnes as the vocalist. Anyway, so that's Cannibal Corpse with The Bleeding. Alright, so that's it for this video. I'm going to stop there. Let me know what's your favorite of the early albums and why. Do you have any particular memories of those albums? I'm interested to know. And that's about it. Okay, so the next video I'm doing is actually going to be a response one, just to change it up, and then I will return to this series in the video after that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks a lot for watching. If you did enjoy it, please leave a thumbs up to support me. That would be great. I hope you continue to watch, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.